Since I spoke with you all last week, I have been living through history, hiding in bomb shelters with some of the most fantastic people I've ever known and worked with, hearing missiles explode, seeing destruction, and seeing firsthand how reality is so often so different from what the media portrays. I've also seen how the US media in particular can so easily be myopic and miss what is essential for truth: context, basics to help you understand the history that you are living through, that we all are living through. Today, I'll talk you through that. I'll tell you about the odyssey that I have been on with this group to get to safety, which included access to a place that, as a rule, I wouldn't be allowed to go to. I am now in a safe place, and that's totally irrelevant to the world. I can't stand when journalists make themselves the story. That's not what's happening here. I'm telling you that because I can now share with you things that I've seen and experienced firsthand that showed where the media goes so incredibly wrong. I'm also telling you that because so many of you have been messaging me worried, and I want you to know that I appreciate it, and I will explain ahead why it would have been unethical for me to do updates, to send out any details, which also speaks to a broader problem in the media landscape in the attention economy. Also, before Israel's strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, activities, and capabilities, I was already having this fascinating experience of being more like a typical U.S. news consumer in terms of U.S. news for a few days in there. And that showed me so clearly how people are getting completely different realities fed to them. I'll explain that and more coming up on this very different episode of They Stand Corrected. Hello and welcome. It is especially good to be with you today. I feel like I haven't taken a deep breath yet, but I will, hopefully, as I talk with you now. Oh, introductions, especially for those of you who are new to this show. My name is Josh Levs, and this is my podcast, They Stand Corrected, which fact-checks the news. I spent 20 years in mainstream media, 10 on NPR, 10 on CNN, where I became lead on-air fact-checker. And while I was fact-checking politicians and pundits and other people, I saw so clearly how much the media itself got wrong, which no one is fact-checking. Now that I'm on the outside, I can talk to you about all that. So this podcast is the first thing in existence that I know of that fact-checks the big mainstream media. I'm going to tell you something at the top. I usually record farther in advance, but I am recording this and we're publishing it tonight because I've just gotten back to safety. And that means that I'm going to be more stream of consciousness than usual. It also means that I'm not going to have as much time as I usually do to go back and piece through every word I've recorded for you. So know what I have told you before. Anything I get wrong, I will stand corrected, and I'll report that in the next episode. And you tell me. There are two great ways to get in touch with me. The number one best way is through the newsletter. I encourage everyone to get the newsletter. It is free. You'll find the link in the show notes. Or you can go to my website, joshlevs.com, JOSHLEVS.com, and you'll see the link to the newsletter. It brings you over to something called Substack. If you are already on Substack, then just look me up by name or just look up They Stand Corrected. You'll find me there. I encourage you to do that because unlike the mainstream media, I don't ask you to take my word for anything. I give you links and images and videos and other stuff for you to see there. While anyone can get the newsletter, if you are a paid subscriber to the newsletter, you can message me there or write in comments. And that is the number one best way to reach me. And it's a way that I honor my paid subscribers who help make this show possible. I have left the discounted rates up that I had set up before Memorial Day. They're still there. So anyone can jump in and be a supporter, be a hero to this show, making it possible to continue. It's especially helpful now as I have been in Israel, seeing so incredibly many powerful things. There's also another way that anyone can reach me, and that is a form at my website. This way, through either of these two methods, your message gets through to me. All right. Usually you start a story at the beginning. In this way, I'm kind of starting at the end because this amazing group of people I was with, we were en route to the airport, Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, to fly back to the United States after an incredible trip when this happened.
Israel launches waves of airstrikes against Iran's nuclear program and ballistic missile sites. Tehran vowing to respond harshly as Iranian state TV confirms the head of the country's Revolutionary Guard has been killed.
That's Bloomberg. And here is MSNBC. They were interviewing Congressman Jim Hines, ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee.
The precision, the accuracy, the taking out of many of the Iranian senior military commanders, the destruction of Iranian air defenses is staggering. The intelligence failure on the part of the Iranians, to allow the killing of their senior-most military people, even though this was largely telegraphed, it was no secret that the United States was taking non-essential personnel from embassies out of in the Gulf for some time now.
Okay, so it was about 3 a.m. We were in this van when this news broke and the airport was being shut down. The Israeli government knew that Iran would, of course, start launching missiles, and we were hearing about how well prepared Israel was, and not alone, with other countries, including the United States, ready to shoot down as many missiles as possible. And while the Iron Dome, Israel's defense system, is amazing in how incredibly many it manages to shoot down, it's not foolproof. There is no foolproof system. Some missiles would, of course, get through. We knew this. This was not what has become, sadly, a typical moment for Israel with the latest volleys. I understood right away how huge this was. It's seismic in the world. Before I get to what it was like in bomb shelters, I just want to talk you through some of this context that, from what I've seen, the media has been failing to help you understand. The first thing to understand is that Iran has, for years and years and years and years, obviously been working to get to levels of enrichment that are high enough to have weapons. I remember many years ago, someone inside CNN who I worked with, she said, why do we even bother to pretend anymore that that's not what Iran is doing? It's so obvious. And there's this thing called the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. It was founded through the UN. It operates independently. It has never really proven to have any ability to keep Iran in check. All the U.S. presidents have been saying how dangerous it is for Iran to get nuclear weapons. Obama made that clear. Biden made that clear. Trump has made that clear. And Iran is a country that screams death to America. But Iran keeps violating promises. And it becomes like imagine that there's a group of people who are just stockpiling weapons on top of each other, like outdoors, putting one on top of the other on top of the other. And they keep getting higher and higher, and they've built this massive staircase to just keep bringing up more and more. And then you've got at the bottom, looking way up at the tower, this group called the IAEA shaking its fingers and saying, you better not add 10 feet more. If you do, you're in big trouble. And then they add 100 feet more. It's been like that for a long time. Here's a little clip of what Israel's ambassador to the United Nations said in the wake of Israel's attack.
You met in emergency sessions when Hamas was under threat, but when Iran marched toward nuclear capability, you said nothing. When they crossed line after line, you drew none of your own. So we acted. We acted to ensure our people alive. We acted so that Jewish children in Jerusalem will not wake up to the sound of air raid sirens triggered by a nuclear launch. We acted because history has taught us that silence is complicity and hesitation is fatal.
That's Danny Danone. Okay, 2 more things that you should know about the context of all this. In general, when it comes to nuclear powers in the world, there has been this theory of mutual destruction. The idea being, if a nuclear power were to launch nuclear war on another part of the world, then that other part of the world would respond with its own nuclear weapons, and that nation would get destroyed, and who would want that? So that theory has helped people feel that nuclear war is less likely. I'm old enough to remember 9/11, and in the wake of 9/11, there was a lot of talk about the failure of imagination. People hadn't imagined that there might be Islamist terrorists who use box cutters to overtake planes to then ram them into these massive buildings and kill all these people and launch an attack that way. All right, failure of imagination. We need to take that lesson and we need to apply it to the whole thought of mutually assured destruction, okay? What if there is a nuclear power that doesn't care about mutual destruction? Or what if, even worse, there is a nuclear power that wants mutual destruction as long as it kills Jews and the West? What if there is a power led and controlled by people who believe that murdering Jews, Christians, Westerners is so good, so important, such a worthy goal, that it's okay if lots and lots of their own people die in the process? All of a sudden, that being a deterrent goes off the table. This is what we have to understand about this growing strain of Islamist terrorism. By the way, if you're new to this show, I have said many times Islamist is different from Muslim, and I have been in Israel speaking with people who are from all kinds of backgrounds, including Muslim people. All right. So take Hamas, for example. Hamas is a terrorist group backed by Iran. Hamas's leaders say, "We love death." Hamas wants to maximize civilian casualties. Groups backed by Iran have made clear that they are fine with the people they are supposed to be responsible for dying, as long as they kill these others in the process. That is essential context to understand the danger of Iran specifically becoming a nuclear power. All right? Preventing Iran from having nuclear weapons is crucial for protecting democracy. This is a nation that keeps saying death to America. In Israel leading up to this, our group met with people of different perspectives. I mean, people who announced that they are proud lefties, all these things. And everyone understood the threat of Iran getting nuclear weapons as existential. It is. To Iran, having about half of the 15 million Jewish people in the world in a relatively small space, a small state the size of New Jersey, to them, that's an opportunity for a new Holocaust. Iran is not hiding its genocidal desire. It pretends that it somehow only wants nuclear energy, which is silly because it keeps doing everything it can to enrich to levels that it can have nuclear weapons. All right, one more piece of context that you need here, and that is how many Iranians have been standing up to the Iranian government. That's part of what makes it hard for Iran to say, oh, Israel's going after our civilians. I mean, the media is already letting them get away with that to some extent. But so many people in Iran have been trying to stand up to their government. They don't want this Islamist control over their lives. Iran has been extending its power. It has been using technology to search the streets for women who might break the headscarf rule. And this, the desire among Iranians to stand up, this is something that I covered years ago that has been going on for a long time. There is a PBS documentary about a woman who became known worldwide as Neda. This was all the way back in 2009 when, after a pseudo-election, Iranians took to the streets. She was among the people killed. I was told, and I just found this for you today, I'd never checked it, but I was told that my voice is one of the first in this PBS documentary because we reported on this woman. Here's a little clip from that.
From the beginning, it's been a story the regime could not suppress.
I'm going to show you a clip now. This is disturbing. I want everyone to know that. But and we have blurred out her face out of respect. But this is possibly the most seen piece of video out of Iran in the world.
All right, and that was about Neda Aga Sultan, who was among the protesters in 2009. What you're hearing there is me on CNN. There are Iranians who have been brave enough to take to the streets. So I also knew as soon as this news broke that that was another wild card. How many Iranians would take this opportunity to see their own government weakened, especially the Revolutionary Guards, which is the government's militia, and take to the streets again, maybe in larger numbers, and make it harder for Iran to fight back if they were also dealing with an increase in protests at home. So all that is context. All right, back to we're in the dark, in the van. We know missiles are coming. I'll be right back with what happened next.
And now I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Josh Levs.
We are blessed to be able to have a speaker this evening who speaks with a lot of heart.
An outstanding author, a principled and groundbreaking journalist, a really engaging speaker and thinker.
Broadcaster, journalist, and host of They Stand Corrected, the podcast fact-checking the news. Thank goodness.
Josh spent 20 years reporting for NPR and CNN, where he developed unique expertise on nonpartisan fact-checking. He has been called Truth Seeker in Chief.
Josh has won multiple Peabody Awards, Murrow Awards,
and awards from the AP, from the Society of Professional Journalists, the National Association of Black Journalists, and more.
His book, All In, was published by HarperCollins and won the Nautilus Gold Award for promoting positive social change. He has spoken to the United Nations, Congress, Google.
And of course, I think is very cool, won a debate at Oxford.
He launched his podcast and newsletter called They Stand Corrected to provide listeners with the truth in a world of disinformation.
Clearly, he is a much-needed voice during these crazy times.
It's my pleasure to introduce Josh Levs to you today.
Please welcome.
Please join me in welcoming Josh Levs.
I love getting out there and meeting people like you. It's such a great opportunity to answer your questions and discover more about listeners to this show and potential listeners too. If you're interested in working out something in person or online, there's a form at my website, joshlevs.com. That's JOSHLEVS.com. You'll find a link in the show notes. Just click bookings. In previous episodes, I've discussed how there's no ethical or journalistic justification for the obsession with portraying Israel in the worst possible ways all the time. And because of that, people try to use a financial argument and they say, well, America gives money to Israel, so that's our reason. And then I've showed that these people never look into which countries are recipients of U.S. aid. I've also pointed out that Israel does so much that benefits America. This is a big example. You can go back and hear all these U.S. presidents talk about what a threat a nuclear-armed Iran will be to America. And Israel, this tiny dot, delivers a huge and crucial blow to Iran's nuclear capabilities. No wonder the United States and the UK and others were ready to work with Israel to try to block as many missiles as possible from Iran's response. I was with a delegation. I want to make sure everyone has some time to be back in safety where we are now. I got home less than 24 hours ago, but you'll be getting to know the amazing people on my trip. And by the way, I think of those of us who were there for all this that I'm about to describe, I might have been the only Jewish delegate. Yeah, I think I was. Anyway, we started heading back to this hotel in Tel Aviv where we had been. And this is when we got information about what to do when various types of sirens go off. And I'll tell you, it is astoundingly well organized how this works. You get an alert on your phone on an app when you need to be near a bomb shelter, and then you get another one when it's time to go into the bomb shelter. Some of the missiles from Iran are so incredibly powerful that even if you're in a shelter, if it's a direct hit, you could still get killed by the missile or by a building falling on you, and there have been deaths. Another possibility is that the interception process leads to some shrapnel falling, and then you're even more likely to be protected by being in the shelter. Out of respect for everyone's privacy, I did not take video inside the shelter, and it would be so wrong and unethical to do so. It's, for a lot of people, a very scary moment. It's also interesting to see the people who are not scared, people who have spent more time in Israel. There were people playing card games down in these basement areas and we're chatting, and you hear some explosions. Some are far enough away that they kind of sound like popcorn popping, but a lot of them are not that far away. These could be interceptions or hits. And what I learned quickly from people in America who were terrified for us was that they were not seeing context. When a building in Tel Aviv got hit, the news showed that building over and over again. And the more you see that, the more you start to think it's the whole city. So I was messaging people and saying, don't worry, I'm fine. We're going to be fine. Now, that said, it's not that big a city. We're talking 20 square miles, which for people in most of the rest of the world is 52 square kilometers. There's about 500,000 people in the city proper. But when you look at the metro area, that's at about 4 million people. It's about 44% of Israel's population lives in Metro Tel Aviv. I was not personally scared that we were going to die, but I realized that there was an experience I was not having that I think a lot of other visitors were, and I'll be looking into that more in the coming days. I wasn't going through the shock part. Growing up, existing, and being outspoken as a member of the people of Judea, people of Israel, people of Zion, all terms for the same thing. In America, we call this group Jewish, people of Judea. I know there are all these people who want to kill us. And I've been to Nuremberg. Obviously, it's still a frightening, disconcerting experience. But I did not post during this time when we spent the next couple of days going back and forth between hotel rooms and shelter, because I did not want to draw any attention to the delegation I was with. I'm not saying there's anything about me personally that would draw any attention, but because people in the news industry know who I am, from people who knew where I was, people who listened to this show, I did hear from people in the industry saying, do you want to jump on and do a live? Do you want to write something? But who knows how to put this in really simple terms, which bad guys out there might say, oh, a delegation, maybe we should go after these people and then look for information about where we were or go by the backgrounds of images or try to search metadata for any posts. Unfortunately, in this era, the attention economy, there are a lot of people around the world who just rush to say, everybody look at me where I am. And you never know if someone near you doesn't want to have their location announced to the world. So anyway, there also were Israeli people still out on the street, still going to the beach, continuing to live life. And we had met these musicians as part of this trip that I'll be talking to you about. Some of them came over and played for us and hung out with us.
Tell me what you see in me.
That's Ori Rakib. Oh, he's great. So I sent that clip to some friends and family, just showing, hey, we're hanging out outside. We are okay. Don't panic. We were fortunate after a couple days of this. We were able to get out. Now, I've been thinking about this. Is this privilege? And I realize the term doesn't actually apply, but it sounds like it would. I'll talk you through this. I mean, in one technical way, it does, but not in the way it's been used culturally in America. Because this group was a delegation organized through a consulate, we had Israeli government experts working to find a way to extricate us. There are people who were there, friends of mine, on tour groups. And so the tour company worked to get them out. So in our case, because there was this government connection, I knew that they would be working on the safest passage for us. So, now I can breathe. We were told that we were going to be taken by land to Jordan, to the airport in Amman. So we eventually started this trek, and we were given access to something that most people do not get access to, the Allenby Bridge. As a rule, this crossing is only available to people whose documents call them Palestinians, identify them as Palestinians, and available to diplomats. So because of our diplomatic connection, we were able to go through that crossing, but there are other crossings as well. And I know people who have gotten through those crossings to Jordan. So we made it through. And then when we got to the other side, we entered what feels like another world. And this is another part of the significance. You know, in Israel, there were all these pride flags everywhere, these giant buildings with these huge pride flag banners going all the way down because it was supposed to be this big pride celebration for LGBTQ plus people and supporters, which obviously got canceled. We crossed into Jordan. And of course, culturally, you see the difference immediately. Now, I've talked to you about Jordan in the past and how this works. Jordan has diplomatic relations with Israel. Jordan is a top recipient of aid from the United States. At one stop in the crossing, I did take some sound. I did not lift up my phone and take video. I was definitely working to be unobtrusive, but here's a little sound. I have some stories to tell you about what happened there, including to one of my traveling companions. I'm going to check in with him and see if he'll share the story with you in coming days. It's just kind of wild what happened. But he's safe. Everyone's safe. We made it through to the Jordan airport in Amman, which is nice, and waited there for a while. And then in the middle of the night, got a flight to Rome. The biggest barrier that we had at that point, missiles from Iran can and do cross over Jordanian airspace. So can other attacks, by the way. The Houthis in Yemen last year killed U.S. soldiers at a base in Jordan. So going up into the skies over Jordan was not a way of being home free at first. We also trusted that everyone will be doing everything they could, including the Jordanian government, to make sure that flights were safe. So once that flight to Rome took off, after about an hour, we could breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that we were outside of those dangers. I mentioned earlier the concept of privilege. The reason it doesn't really apply when I think about it is that those of us on this group chose to do this trip knowing if something happened, who would be responsible for us to find safe passage out. So it was an active choice that we made. That said, I recognize how fortunate we were to be able to get out what turned out to be relatively quickly. And as I record this, there are still people across the state of Israel trying to find safe passage out. And I will tell you, I have mixed feelings about even being back now. I'm now back in Atlanta. There are so many other people who are still in harm's way, who are standing for the right to be a minority in the world and not part of an empire that tries to overtake the world. I also want to make sure that no one gets any false comparisons in their heads. I have seen some people try to say, oh, it's so unfair. Israel's able to get people out and people in Gaza are not. That's ridiculous. Gaza has been given tens of billions of dollars, so much money over the years. And instead of using it to build a society and educate people and protect citizens, Hamas has used it to smuggle in weapons and to create the largest tunnel terror network in all of human history and put people in danger. And much like in Iran, it takes people standing up to their government to demand an end to their own terrorist leadership. This is how societies work. People have to stand up. All right. So what was going on here in the States during that time? That's coming up. As soon as the news broke of Israel launching these successful attacks against key Iranian nuclear sites, including attacks from inside Iran, I knew there would be this one instant runaway angle in U.S. media. So much of our media sees everything through a political prism. And journalists and news executives don't take time to stop and think. Just think. So here's what happened. There were reports saying, oh, this was Israel going against the wishes of the United States. Here's one interesting example. Senator Chris Murphy is a Democrat. He was interviewed on MSNBC. Now, he is a big Trump critic, but in this case, it seems that he's suddenly saying that Israel should have done what Trump wants. Here's a clip of him.
Clearly, our president, Donald Trump, didn't believe that a military strike was the right option. He, in fact, told the world that he had told Netanyahu to wait, to give him time for diplomacy. Now it looks as if diplomacy has no chance.
Do you remember the killing of Osama bin Laden? In the lead up to that secret operation, President Obama spoke at the White House Correspondents Association dinner, doing comedy, seeming relaxed. He also went golfing. He was clearly making it seem that there was no big secret plan in place for anything. So when anyone in the media sees immediate reactions from lawmakers or anyone saying, oh, this wasn't what the United States wanted, the instinctive response should be, wait a second. It's completely possible that some of the posturing in advance of this was done by the United States. It doesn't have to mean Trump somehow being some brilliant strategist. It doesn't have to be that complicated. And quite possibly, that helped prevent Iran from finding out what was going on, particularly after this 60-day deadline had ended. Also, the idea that Iran's chief negotiator was in any way trustworthy or was going to get toward peace doesn't even make sense. That was never what Iran was engaged in. They've always just been buying more and more and more time until now, successfully. Also, it was not long before the reporting came out that, of course, the United States knew this was coming, which also helps explain why the United States was there to help protect people like me when the missiles began to fall. Is the United States and a bunch of other countries that have been taking part in trying to block those attacks. One more thing before I go here. It was so interesting. I was so busy on this trip through Israel that when it came to news in America, I only had enough time to look into coverage that was about as much as is typical for people in the country. Obviously, I follow news closely, but most people don't. So I saw quick updates on certain stories from the U.S., particularly what was going on in California. And I spoke with other Americans and expats whom I met, and it was fascinating to see how the algorithms that drive people's social media apps and phones were giving them different realities. Some people were saying, did you see Los Angeles is on fire? There's all this violence, so much violence. Other people were saying, did you see how horrible it is what the Trump administration is doing? And really, there hasn't been that much violence. It's just that there were a couple examples and they got all this attention. That is what happens all over this country all the time. Because of the situation I've been in until now, I have not yet had a chance to analyze how the news has been doing in covering all this. So I want to hear from you. Tell me, what have you been seeing in the media coverage of Trump's move with the National Guard in California and everything else that's been happening stateside over the past week and a half? I want to hear from you. As I mentioned earlier, there are two great ways to reach me. The best way is to become a paid subscriber to the newsletter, and I could use your support. There's a lot of work to get done here. And if you don't want the newsletter for any reason, there is another way to support the show through a PayPal link, which you'll find in the show notes or just paypal.me/JoshLevs. Or you can use a form at my website. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, tell everyone you've ever met or heard of to tune in to this show. And to those of you right now in Israel who are still in harm's way amid these attacks from Iran and its proxies, thoughts with you, so much strength and love. And I look forward to telling the positive, eye-opening stories that I gathered in the country before this latest attack. As always, to everyone listening, thank you so much. It really is so good to be back with you. And I will see you next week.